So I've been an architect for 100 million years now, but I've owned my company for 20. Thing that didn't teach me in architecture school, maybe your schooling was better, is that really, architects need to be able to draw, they need to be able to imagine stuff, but really what they have to do first and foremost before any of that happens is they have to listen. And listening is a critical skill for probably any person, but certainly any architect. Starting with asking the right questions. And then, even more important than that, is asking the right follow up. So, when we're doing the visioning meeting, I've got a questionnaire, it's 14 pages or more, 100 questions. All of them are important, but none of them are as important as any of the follow up questions because as soon as I get a little whiff of something that's strong, either positive or negative, we got to dig into it, right? Because we have to set up the right environment so that they can express themselves. And so what I do to help my client is I ask them questions that are big picture and then go down to little and then back to big and down to little. And I always end with, or not end, but somewhere late in the questions, I ask, what brings you peace? And what brings you joy in the reverse order. So what brings you joy? Because if I'm designing something for somebody, it needs to bring them joy. It has to do that. And so I used to ask. And then, what brings you peace is a totally different thing for people. And they often haven't thought about that. So sometimes I get people who respond that, oh, I forgot to say, what really brings me peace is, and then whatever it is. So then I take a page out of Michelle Dempsey's book. And she did this to you and Amy years ago now.
Yeah.
And so what she does to her clients and what I now do to all of my clients is I have them write one thing on one card that has to be there for the project to be a success. And then you write that and whatever it is. And then you move to the next card and the next card and the next card. And I usually help my clients along because now we've had that. It's probably about 2.5 hours of talking. So I know some things that are going to be there. And so I like, okay, how about this? Oh, yeah, that'll be something. And if they say, yeah, I don't know, take that card, rip it up, it is not important. That's okay.
Yeah.
I don't have to be right. We just have to get a broad range. And then we put all those cards, there's usually 40 or 50, 60 maybe, put them into piles. And the piles might be, one is kitchen is the heart of the home. And we name those. And I try to get them to name their piles because this is all about the kitchen heart of the home. And then there might be one that's about connecting to nature, like inside to out. That's a typical thing. And then they'll name that, nature, whatever they name it. And then there's like maybe 8 piles with 8 names. And then I write those right on the drawings. So to me, that's our North Star.
Yeah.
So, and, the very first page are those 8 piles with the names and everything in the pile. So we can't miss the vision.
I love that because vision, I think a lot of people look at vision as, hey, I'm going to sit down and magically have this full image of my dream or my project. Mm-hmm. And there's a real process to that. And I love that you're breaking it down. And I love that it's starting with words, because like there's a lot of power in our words. The Bible talks about like we can speak things into life. Right. And, I've gone through a similar process in like my leadership development where we had a stack of cards and we pulled out the things that resonated to us. So it's not that you're being fed this, but you're being, okay, here are some things that, as you see, you're going to see some things that resonate with you. And then you can begin to own that and then name that.
Right.
And then I think that's step one, probably a multi-step to getting to an actual vision. So if you start with words, then how do you move from what is your next step?
You didn't say this, so I want to stress this, which is kind of you were close. My clients don't usually talk about their hopes, needs, wants, and dreams on a day-to-day basis. So their vocabulary and their thinking needs to be sort of jump-started a little bit. And so that's why I do the questionnaire and I get it going. And then I focus them big, focus them small, and nudge them along, but not direct, just nudge them, not in a specific direction, but in their direction. And it's different for every client. That's why we do Michelle's trick at the end, because now they've got their vocabulary. And again, I will slip in a card or two that I think is going to be really important to them, even if they don't know it yet. Again, that's a really important because if we were talking about, I don't know, like the Broncos football game or fill in the blank, anything that people spend too much time thinking about, I wouldn't have to jumpstart the conversation. They know if they're Broncos fans, all about whoever. I don't follow Broncos at a certain moment, but anyway, but you get the point. Once we have their words, I do something that's very different than most architects. So most architects will come up with a floor plan, and that's like a bubble diagram for how to put the spaces together. Because really, the hardest part about any project is getting the flow right, the circulation right, the adjacencies right. All of that is literally the hardest part. And then it's like, what about making it beautiful? It's like, well, if I design a project that isn't beautiful, it'll be the very first one. That's not the hard part.
Yeah.
The hard part is getting it to fit. Like I always use Daniel Craig as an example. So Daniel Craig was James Bond, and he had a first James Bond movie. I think it was Casino Royale. And in one of the scenes, he's wearing a tuxedo. Well, rarely have you ever seen a tuxedo look better on anyone ever. And the reason it looks so good on him is twofold. One, he's in good shape. All right. Two, it's like to the millimeter tailored to him, not to a guy who's roughly his height and roughly his weight, to him. And that's what I try to do with every project, is tailor that project to the specific clients, their hopes, needs, wants, and dreams specifically, so that they are the leader of the project, the captain of the ship, but also the muse, right? That there were all of the inspirations coming from. But so what architects do is they show a plan. What I do is show a model of what that plan could be. So what architects have done in the past is, cardboard to kind of put together, and here's how maybe the roof would be, and here's you start to see a little bit about the proportions and all that. Nothing about materials, because it's not important yet. But with adjacencies comes volume, right? Like, oh, where's the second floor going to be? Is it going to be over here? Or do we get a two-story space? Or do we get a vaulted ceiling? Or do whatever? The very first design meeting that my clients had, they put on virtual reality goggles and we go into a white building. So the windows are white, the doors are white, the walls are white, the ceiling is white, the floor is white, the counters are white, everything is white. And so it takes you out of the experience of, well, I would like the cabinets or whatever to be wood. We're not even talking about that. It doesn't really matter. What we are talking about is we're trying to help them make three-dimensional decisions with three-dimensional information instead of three-dimensional decisions with two-dimensional information. It's a powerful tool, but it goes, it's a little bit like the movie Polar Express. It was an animated movie a number of years ago where the people looked super realistic, but not realistic. No. And so I'm always worried that I'm doing the same thing. That the movie was a little bit creepy, and to some very creepy, because it was on the edge. So the animated movies by, let's say, Pixar, where the humans aren't really all that human, that's fine. And then the animated movies that came after it, where the humans look really human, well, that's fine too. But this was right in the middle, and that's where I am with this first model. And I know it's like, so I keep reminding people this is only for what we're going to definitely, this is going to change, right?
I want to come back to this a little bit, where you talked about you moved them from small scale to large scale, because I think there's something really interesting there that we ought to explore a little bit. Mm-hmm. You also mentioned that the client is the muse. You're helping them visualize a 3D visualization of what this dream is, because they came to you with this dream of, whether it's a place for their family or a new business or a new hotel or whatever it is that you're going to be helping them develop it out. You're turning that from, an idea to, working out the complexities of adjacencies to, something that's now like inspired. So right. Go back to that idea, like the muse and the inspiration, like what are the things that you're pulling out? If I'm your client, what are you pulling out of me to make sure that, this beautiful space is now inspired and something that I resonate with?
So one of the things that, again, they didn't teach in architecture school, but I think they probably should, is body language. When people talk specifically, and again, my clients are almost always husband and wife. So there's almost always two. And one will say, and I really want this. And the other one, sometimes their knuckles will turn white. And the body language, unless you're on the street or whoever, never lies, right? So if you're paying attention to that, we've caught some stress there, and we need to dig into that. And so that by the time I'm done with that, the 2E clarity session, I have a feeling of where we need to be, because the couple is a rich amount of inspiration, and they always are. And then to help me, they are on usually house.com, and they give me usually 10 or so images, and then we're going to do more later, but 10 to start, 15 at the moment, and so usually that means 15 or 20, just so you know.
Yeah.
And so anyway, and that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But I don't want 100 at the beginning. I'll need that. But so now I see the things that appeal to them, and I start to ask them about each individual photo. And what do you like about this photo? And then they'll say something, whatever it is. And then I'll pick out something else. What about the floor? How about that window? What about the pendant lights? And then I didn't even see the pendant lights. No, I don't like them at all. Okay, good. Now we have an edge. And so I start to attune their aesthetic sensibilities, so that I can design for them. It's like I'm tuning myself to them. And then once I do that first model, I'm trying to add in some aspirational, inspirational spaces, because architecture, good and bad, is expensive. So let's make it good.
Yeah.
And what I try to do is on every drawing and every model is show people how they have been absolutely listened to and understood. And so this is when you said this is why I designed that. So they see that. And that you could see people's blood pressure go down, because what I'm trying to do is lower their stress level, because it's a stressful thing to design a building.
Yeah.
Of any size. And there's a million choices, and you just want to make sure you're headed always in the right direction. And that's what I'm trying to do every time.
So, you've been practicing architecture for a long time, probably before there was virtual reality.
Yep.
Maybe before there was 3D architecture.
Yep.
Okay. And so there was probably a season where, it was, either 2D drawings or hand drawings, or maybe we're still using those. But this idea of clarity, like if I can really, we talked about naming it, like I can name it. And then you're helping people go through this process of owning it. So it's my vision. I'm pulling into something that's going to be inspired. And then you're helping people visualize, 3D walkthrough, experience that. Building is tough. I strongly believe vision casting and clarity is super important. And the clearer you have that in the mind, that the easier it is to stick with a project, a dream, whatever it is. And so you're helping people get that. What have you seen differently over your career from maybe we had a vague sense of, that vision versus the clarity vision of a virtual walkthrough where you're at now?
So the first thing to mention is that the reason to hire an architect is for their talent and not the fancy schmancy tools that they may or may not use. So I use fancy schmancy tools, and I love them because of that clarity that you just talked about. But if I was not talented, there would be no use for it.
Yeah.
And many.
That's a beautiful guitar there. But if I pick that up, it is not going to sound like you.
Right, exactly. And it's the same thing with virtual reality. So people who use virtual reality certainly have a head start. There's no question about it. And it's a big head start. But it's not for thousands and thousands of years, name your favorite building of anything more than 30 years ago. There was no virtual reality. So there were beautiful buildings before virtual reality. And I think at that moment in time, clients were relying on tone of voice. This is super exciting because now we have this vaulted ceiling in the kitchen, whatever. And then the architect and the people are falling in love with the words, the clients, and that tone of voice and that body language of certainty that the architect is bringing. And I did that for years. I would do beautiful hand drawings. I can draw it. And people would look at the beautiful hand drawings and say, it's beautiful, and they usually were. And again, that would be lowering the stress, but they didn't fully understand it. So I was jogging, I don't know, maybe 15 or even 20 years ago. And I came up with this idea of what we as architects should do, again, to help our clients make the best decisions consistent for them, is give them unlimited three-dimensional drawings. That's what we need to do. I couldn't even conceive of virtual reality And so it took a while to come up with that. Essentially, I made a BIMX model before there were BIMX models. And then I would do views of that. I got it just artistic enough that it was, you could start to believe. Blah. And then I would put a photograph of the finished project right next to the rendering. And they were the same because the renderings I was doing then still are just a different version of the construction document. Same thing, same model, but just a different version. So a three-dimensional thing versus a horizontal cut would be a floor plan. Vertical cut would be a section. They're all the same. The renderings matched the photographs exactly, but they didn't really show what the space felt like. So then, a friend of mine, Henry Berger, said, Peter, you're like right on top of virtual reality. You should like at least look at it. And then Henry introduced me to Richard Reinhardt, who you know. Mm-hmm. And Richard said, yes, let me show you VR. And so that was probably 12 years ago, something like that. And so then it became this uphill battle about trying to get the computers, which really didn't have enough power at that time to do VR the way I wanted to do it. So it was a technical struggle, which is hilarious because I'm not a computer person. You know, my famous joke is I know 3 programs. I know ArchiCAD, so I can design buildings. I know Twinmotion, so I can do virtual reality. And I know email. And I'm particularly good at reply all. For me, that was a long slog to get to where I am. But it's amazing to see people literally cry because they're so happy about the design.
I want to do a little thought experiment here, and let's set up an avatar client. Let's call him Alex.
Okay.
What's one of your like professions that you see a lot of your clients?
There's a lot of I got CEOs, entrepreneurs, that kind of thing that own businesses.
All right. So I'm Alex. I'm a CEO. I ran a successful tech company. You know, I've built a lot of things in my life in this tech area.
Yep.
And one of my dreams now is to build, you know, my dream home for my family. Next, I'm going to build my boutique hotel, but we'll come back to that later.
Yep.
Yeah. So he's going to Peter Towhy
No, he and his wife.
And his wife.
Or her husband, Alex, could be female. And so the spouse is Pat.
Yeah, so Alex and Pat are coming to sit out with
and
you.
Usually, if we have a CEO, the other person is artistic. One client who designs jewelry as one of the people, they're very strong in love and connection and balancing the two people out. For some reason, I get a lot of first marriages. I don't understand why. It doesn't really matter. But first marriages tend to be more complementary, less the same than maybe second or third marriages, whatever. So the one is very much focused on the family from the love and connection perspective. The other would be very much focused on the family from maybe a financial security perspective. So they're both focused on the family, but in very different ways. And so I always have to make sure I talk to both halves of that kind of a couple.
Or bring the wife note, you know, for permission.
Right. The men selecting colors must have a note from their wives.
Yeah, for sure. All right. So Alex, he's built a company. He's built a lot of things. He's moving from, one area of strength to this new area of strength. You've helped him go through this vision session and develop out, what their unique inspiration is. Yep. You've helped them organize their thoughts into words and into a concept. And now we've gotten this, initial 3D model that I know pretty clearly what it is. So I'm kind of on my step 2 or 3. Why is this? And I've spent more time in this space. Maybe just pause there. Why has this helped me to spend more time, money, effort in this inspiration, visioning space versus Joe Architect over here who, he's got a set of plans ready and we could start building tomorrow. What's my unique advantage for coming in and doing this?
Yeah. So we tailor like again, you go back to Daniel Craig and that amazing tuxedo and Casino Royale. There's nothing like the ability to live life in a home that's been specifically designed for you. So the most beautiful home in the world is the home specifically designed for you. And that's true of boutique hotels as well. Because what you want to do, Zeke, I know, because we've talked about this, is create this very unique experience that is You step off of the street and into this fantasy, but it's this experiential experience that heightens you. Like you look at the materials, you look at the volumes, you look at the lighting, you look at everything, and we do the same thing. So the what I want to do is control people's moods with architecture, and it happens every time. So and everyone knows this. Anyone who's ever been in a cathedral in Europe, and it's just the architecture telling you this is a different kind of space that requires a different kind of appreciation and reverence. Same thing happens if you go into a lousy fast food restaurant.
Mm-hmm.
Like in the opposite way, like it's okay to leave food on the floor clearly because that's what's happening.
And it may be difficult, like, for you and I, we could probably describe, well, the acoustics are better here, the volumes, the lighting coming in, but it may be difficult. But I think Alex and Bat could sit into the fast food place and, the European, cathedral, and you could feel
Right.
the difference.
Yeah, and they know that. And the reason they come to us is because it's very palpable to them that the design is affecting them. It is, but it's not palpable to everybody. Like I have a friend who has these model airplanes. He spends a ton of money on it. So the model airplanes are like, they could probably fly, the pilot could be a Chihuahua. I mean, they're big. And he lives in a house that's, not great. He would never be one of my clients. He's a great friend, right? Yeah. But it would never be one of my clients because he doesn't have that. It's not palpable to him. He would rather spend his money someplace else, which is great. He's not making a wrong decision, but he's not making the decision that Alex and Pat are making. So when they call me, what they want to do is elevate their life. That's what they really through their home and elevate it every day. And they're creating the space that all future memories will be created within. And they're very cognizant of that, and they're very excited about that. And so the virtual reality is like what we do is literally like we write down all the pros because we never want to ruin a good pro just to solve the second list, all the cons. And when you have all the cons, we got to solve them all. And so we do. So we start solving the cons so that there are only pros and there are no more cons. Then we're ready. But what I love about the virtual reality is as we start to develop the model, I can't miss. So in other words, there's no ambiguity. It's 100% confidence because, I've translated the language of the architect, which is normally drawings, into the language of the client, which is, just looking and seeing. It's even better than a movie. It's like when a client puts on a pair of virtual reality goggles and they angle their head back. And this has happened so many times that I can't tell you, where I've made a video of their house. They've seen the video and with the high ceiling and with the big windows, clear story windows, whatever. And then they put the goggles on and they lean back. Oh, the ceiling is really high, like that. It's like, it was in the video.
And I'll push back on that a little bit, Peter. I mean, I think, I think virtual reality is amazing. I'll come back to your Fender here.
Okay.
Amazing guitar, beautiful. And, when you play it, like it sounds incredible. But if I pick it up, it's, everybody's going to run. Yeah. Same thing with VR. Like you can go online, you can find a lot of guys to do some VR. Mm-hmm. What I think, you do well, what good architecture does well is the 3 steps of 4. It's you're creating not inspired space. You're just allowing somebody to experience that inspired space a little before it's done, a lot before it's done. And to me, that comes back to this idea of holding that vision in your mind. I can, name it, taste it, see it, smell it, walk in it. By God, when the builder comes up and it's over budget, or the city comes in with a delay in permit, like, hey, this isn't just a project. Like this is a goal and a dream, and it's something that we're going to figure out. And you're setting that that vivid vision in a way that becomes a very tangible tool where a lot of people have this idea, but not a lot of people get it done. And it's one more tool that Alex had to utilize. First he had to come from a strength to strength. He had to build that CEO company out, that business. Yep. He did something to be able to leverage up to the next, and you've helped him pull that next level of strength. Started out small, move big. I know a little bit about your history as an architect, and I want to kind of return back to that, like starting small and then growing things up. You maybe talk a little bit about this. You work for a large firm, and then like all of us entrepreneurs, you got to take the cliff to start your small firm and then to grow it back up. You have talked about one of your first small projects as this porch. And I'd love to, kind of, hit on that little story maybe, and then talk about how that doing one thing well has led to do everything well.
So years ago, I was asked to speak at a little conference in New York City, and it was basically on this topic. So, how did you start? And the first thing I did when I started is I didn't try to, or even make any small attempt at stealing a client from my bosses. I like those guys. So I went out on my own and started, with small projects. He did a wine tasting area in a basement, and they loved it so much that to this day, if I'm in the neighborhood, there's a wine tasting party, like, because they have plenty of wine at all times, and so I'm always invited. But this porch was it's one of those houses that the second floor overhangs the first about 2 feet, and then there was no porch on the front door at all. But connecting all those shapes together was not that easy, because really what you were going to do is come at this front porch from the side. So the whole thing was maybe 8 by 10 or whatever, and I photographed it and put it in my portfolio for a couple of years later. I'm doing $2 million houses and larger, but literally the week before, I'm working on probably a $6 million house or more. And this is back when 6 million was a real lot of money, back in those days. And so I know I could do it. The architecture part was going to be the hard part. The hard part was going to be finding the right kind of clients for me that we would both thrive, right? So it's not good enough. Like a lot of architects, you could kind of see it by the website, where if every single house or building looks kind of the same, you're not paying attention to the client. They're paying attention to what they want to design. Mm-hmm. And it's fine. That really is fine if you are a client and you see that and you want that. Like that style, they're doing it. Perfect. For me, you look at my website and you see all different kinds of styles. There's a Mediterranean home, there's contemporary homes, there's modern homes, there's traditional homes, there's French country homes, whatever. And it's, to me, what I want is for each client they give me a gift, and it's their style, it's their personality, it's their aesthetic, and I open this gift and try to give it right back to them.
So what I love about that story, Peter, is that it is the humbleness of it. Like, hey, you could have said, I'm doing $6 million projects. I'm only going to do $6 million projects or more here.
Right.
Rather than doing that, like, I think what, I try to, get across to my team is like, how you do one thing is how you do everything. Right. And this ability, we're just changing scales. It doesn't matter if you're designing, a really beautiful Fender guitar or you're designing a city. Right. It's the same design principles. And if you can take the time to focus on, doing that task at hand really well, then scaling, becomes a joy. On the opposite side, if you do a really shitty bathroom, and then you hire that architect to do a big complex, then you have a really big shitty complex. And so or the same thing in a business. Like, if he goes back to Alex at this company, like, if he hey, I'm not really doing well in my small business, but you know what's going to solve it if I just make it bigger.
Right.
And I went through a period of that, and I said, well, I'll just make it bigger. And what I got was bigger problems. Yeah. Right. And so taking that time to get the small things well before you grow it up, I think it works across architecture, it works across businesses, it works across your life.
Yeah. So here's my insider tip. Here you go.
Yeah.
Is when clients come in to interview me, I am interviewing them. And so what I want from them is they can't be boring. Mm. I don't want boring clients. I apologize to anyone who thinks that they're boring, and that's great. And there's really fine. You just work with a different architect. That's okay. Second is they have to have an interesting dream, right? And so the dream to me, and it has to be strong for them. But like, I don't want to work with, like, somebody asked me years and years ago what the best architectural style was. And so it's like, well, mid-century modern beats Tuscan out by percentage points. And they're like, really? And they should work for me. And and that's fine. Not every client is going to be for me. And I have a sort of a narrow focus. And then the third and most important, probably most important from a stress perspective, is their budget has to match their dream. And if it doesn't, I'm not interested. So I had one client come in years ago and say they wanted to have like an $8 million house, but they only had $4 million. So make it work. And which I kind of know how to do that, but it's very stressful because you have to force people into decisions that they don't really want because they don't have the money to do what they really want. So we spend very little money on lots of things and a lot of money on a little. So to make it feel luxurious, but most people after the first couple million want the best floor, they want the best counters, they want the best cabinets, they want the best windows, they want the best whatever. You can't do that.
Too many things.
Right.
Too many things, right? So, how would you have felt if that client came in and he wanted a $3 million house, but he had a $4 million budget?
Exactly. Those are the people who, to me, are much more interesting. So they have a dream, they have a budget, and they have a contingency. And they have a feeling that their dream is going to be supersized or accelerated or made amazing by our collaboration, not by me, but by our collaboration. And so they know that that's probably going to cost more than what they've initially put out. So they have this contingency. And to me, that's like, I don't really care what the budget is. Did you get that?
That's what I'm pointing at.
Right.
Here, right.
And so the budget isn't the important part. Like we could be doing, like I have people are inviting me to do a small, less than 3,000 square foot house, which is fine. There's nothing wrong with less than 3,000 square foot houses. I don't like, but their budget is for like roughly a 4,000 square foot. Mm-hmm. So to me, that's really interesting because we get to stress quality as opposed to quantity.
Yeah.
And I try to do that all the time. And it's actually one of my other pro tip secrets is to get people's budget to stretch as far as it will go with make the house or building or anything else as small as it can possibly be so that we can then focus money on quality as opposed to size.
I see in this, again, kind of come back to this idea of strength to strength. It's, oftentimes we're trying to do way too many things too far. I'm probably, raise my hand and pointing at me. And one of the things I continue, come back and have conversations with you is, it's this pruning. And the same thing with our clients. Architecture, back to this idea, architecture being an analogy. If you can say, okay, I'm going to do one thing really well rather than trying to do everything. My guess is that, that $4 million house with the, or the $3 million budget or $4 million budget for the $3 million house, now is probably a $6 million house because you've created an inspiring, beautiful space versus the guy that had a $4 million budget asking for $8 million. It's probably, less than $4, right? It's a big mansion. It's like, and you haven't really served well. But if you go ahead and say, okay, I'm going to do a few things really well. And I've seen you do this a little bit with your career and kind of leaning at that. It's like, hey, I'm at this place right now where I really want to do, you are doing, few but amazing projects. And, you're working with clients that are in that same place. So like, hey, this is our next thing. It's the most important project. And, and if we're going to work on that, we're going to create the most important thing.
That's actually the fourth aspect of whether I sign on to a project or not. So those first three we already talked about is that they can't be boring, that their dream has to be interesting, the budget has to match the dream. But the last one is we have to agree, the client and myself, that this is the single most important construction project on the planet. So they have to be like as invested in the design of their home as I am invested in the design.
I liked your second or third point there about the person has to be interesting. So the person, has to be important. You're limiting, the amount of things you're trying to shove into a bucket and come up with the right budget. With this idea of strength to strength, I think that's part of the thing that makes, life interesting and richer. It's not always scaling to get bigger, but maybe just, pulling in, the things that make life richer, music and travel, and all of those things that make great projects, great lives. When you pull out that out of a person, and bring that into a project, what does that look like? What does that feel like?
That's a really good question. So, again, I developed this questionnaire, and over the first probably 5 years of my firm, and one of the early people, her name's was interviewed by another architect, and they hired that other architect, and the other architect did a lousy job. So then they were looking around for other options, and I said, well, let's not hire me right off the bat. Instead, we'll just do the clarity session. I'll charge you hourly for the clarity session. This will help the other architect for sure to understand your dream better. And when we got to a question, when you put your makeup on, do you prefer to be standing or seated? Do you want to be I would know. Just tell me about that. And she started crying. I'm like, oh, wait, I don't want people crying during this interview. But she's like, it was all I could take that for you to ask. And so that's when I understood that importance of asking the right questions and truly listening so all of my clients feel heard. And so to me, that's a very gratifying experience for me, that they feel heard. And so that just propelled me forward and to really lean into listening. And I read books on listening, and I even on body language. And so there, to me, that's the key that unlocks the door, of that vision, is to understand, because you could imagine a client saying, yeah, I really want a strong connection to nature and the outside. And that's a one sentence that has one meaning. Or they can say, I really want to have a connection to, nature and the outside. And that's the same words in the same word, but very different. And so to be really leaning in on that, to me, is what makes, me. Right?
That's beautiful. And so, Alex is, he's scaled the vision, he's put the vision together. You helped him get there. You helped him scale, do something bigger by actually doing less, by focusing on, what's quality and what's good. All right. Now he's got this clarity. He's got the drawings in. He's got it submitted for permit. The next thing is really accomplishing a big project here.
Right.
What do you see as the key things, that help now implement and accomplish that big dream to finish it on?
We just finished a house not too long ago for Justin and Laura, and Justin came over me, and it kind of gave me one of those little nudges, because we're completely framed. Windows had just gone in, so we don't have insulation. There's not a lot of anything else. The HVAC was going in at that moment. The electrical would be following it. But he looks at me, and you could see with pride in his eyes that I'm getting this deja vu feeling. Like I've been here before. Justin is a tech god, I would say. So he took my virtual reality environment file and brought it home with him and watched it for hours on his headset on his house, in his own previous house. And so he had every nook and cranny, he was there. And so we made the design really specific, but the virtual reality isn't only for the clients. So we show the contractors the virtual reality so they understand. When you do a model as well as we do, you get takeoffs. So we know exactly how much roof there is on any house. We know exactly how much siding there is. If there's two different sidings, we know exactly how much one person. So the contractor's benefiting from the work that we put in as well. So it's helping everyone. But still, there are times, and it's not that often anymore, again, with the virtual reality, but it happens, where someone says, this is not exactly what I thought it was going to be. What are we going to do? Or in Justin's case, we had a wall that was only 8 feet tall or something like that in a 12 or 13 foot tall ceiling space. And we were having trouble getting it not to wiggle at all. And so there's issues that come around, and we figured out, not me. I'm the one who doesn't usually figure out the answers, but I just keep asking the right questions until the contractor figures out the answer, and or someone else does. But my point is that the process of building one of these luxury homes is really sort of almost anticlimactic in a way because they've already seen it. And it's really just about making the actual building match the quality of the virtual reality environment. And the reason that it's that is because like a drawing might tell you what a building looks like. It might not, because drawings can be confusing as well as illuminating. But a virtual reality experience is always going to tell you that. But more than that, the virtual reality environment will show you how the building feels, right? And no drawing has ever done that. Not one drawing, not ever. And so for me, we're just trying to get that feeling from the VR into the actual world. And we're good at that because, again, the virtual reality matches the landscape, on the outside, the sun orientation. So the sun will be streaming in on the breakfast table in the morning, because it has to, because it's, we've already determined that. And and everything else, So to me, it's really just about getting the contractor to build the building, in this case, a home, as well as it was modeled in virtual reality, which again, that's not that big a jump. They love it. The contractors love it because by and large, my clients don't change it, because they've already seen it. They just want this. And that's for them a dream. That's a dream. So let me ask you one question.
Yeah, for sure.
So with hospitality, like how is that different than if you were designing, let's say, an office building, another commercial, specifically the boutique hotel? So my understanding is that commercial clients are in general professional architecture clients, and they design office buildings and campuses and whatever else. But I would think that the boutique hotel might be a little different. So what is the same and what's different?
Well, let's go back to Alex. So, Alex has, now built his own company. He's built his dream home, and he's looking going from strength to strength again. All right, what are the things that I'm passionate and excited about? And, and for Alex, like, he grew up in a family that had, that were all about like welcoming his cousins and neighbors and family in, and hospitality was just in their blood, and they would cook and, have special food come in, and they love to travel and see all the other unique spaces around the country. And so, as he's looking to go from, one project that's, he's now done something small and learned how to do that well, and ready to scale that up and to do something, larger. And he's got to, pull in the things that he's passionate about that makes a richer project, a richer life. This may be something that he's looking to, develop out that, he's not going to share with his family. Now he's going to be able to share that with a community. He's going to create that. It's still the same basis. I'm going to create an inspired, beautiful space for people to come in and be a part of. You're going to go through those same, visioning steps of architecture, where I'm going to help, guide and create that vivid vision of what that's going to look like. We're going to walk through that in virtual reality. And then we're going to, take and, pull that next level dream into something that's a little bit bigger, a little bit different, that you're going to now open up from, serving your family to maybe serving the whole community.
Right. So to me, like when I'm designing a house, it's about the client and about the site, but more about the client, but still all about the site. But for you, I think the site is a lot bigger. So what I mean by that is my site is 3 acres or whatever. Your site is the city or town that it's in.
If I'm Alex, I say love adventuring. I love going out on the weekends and riding my, mountain bike and climbing. And so when I want to create a space, I'm creating that space for other people like me. Right. So in a way, it's similar, where I'm thinking about what are the things that bring me joy, and I want to share that with other people. We're just going to do that in multiple, spaces. So we're going to create unique spaces that attract a certain type of people. And, maybe, Joe, loves music, and, he's been a fan going to Red Rocks for years, and, really wants to create a great venue that hosts people coming from Red Rocks and, allows people to come and, experience that space. And so maybe that is the, piece that, is getting pulled out as inspiration to create a great hospitality space. So same process, and we've done obviously single families and worked through all these different projects. What we're most passionate and excited about at Root right now is helping that entrepreneur that has that dream of creating that unique hospitality space to be able to share, and that's going to look like a lot of different things depending on the client person that's coming in.
Yeah, and what I like about it is that it's aspirational spaces and inspirational spaces because that's good business.
Yeah.
For that. And to me, that just is an exciting niche to be in. But it's a little bit like this might be a good way to end. One of the things that we have in common with the woman who cuts my hair is that her job is simply to make dreams come true. Like, just not ugly. That's the dream, not ugly. And so she cuts my hair and it looks fine. It looks great. And our job is the same. Is to help people's dreams come true and to be better than they ever thought they could be. So Alex, who comes to you for a boutique hotel, has this idea that if everything goes really well and we get 100 out of 100, we'll get a boutique hotel of men's quality. But that's not true because it's not going to be 100 out of 100. It's going to be 180 out of 100. They don't even know how good their dream is. And it's not your dream. They just don't know how good their own dream even is. And so we bring that out of them. And so that's what
I think we could go on and on for a long time, and always enjoy working with you. And we will exit with some of those great tunes that you left us. All right, sounds good.